I'll never forget the moment my life fell apart. It was a Tuesday, ordinary in every way, except for what I walked into. I had just returned home to Cedar Falls, a quiet suburb outside of Denver. My duffel bag was slung over my shoulder, and the faint smell of jet fuel clung to my clothes after the long flight. Exhausted, my body ached from weeks of grueling deployment. But as I walked up the driveway of our modest two-story house, all I could think about was seeing my wife, Elena. She was my rock, or so I thought. The thought of her bright, reassuring smile waiting for me had kept me sane during those endless nights on base. At 36 years old, I'd built my life around her. We had spent 10 years together, and in my mind, we were solid, unshakable. But the house was silent. Too silent. Elena? I called out as I stepped into the entryway, dropping my bag by the door. No answer. Strange. Usually, Elena would come rushing to greet me, throwing her arms around my neck like I'd been gone for a year, not a few months. The faint smell of lavender candles lingered in the air, a scent she loved, but the atmosphere felt off. I checked the kitchen. Empty. The living room. Empty. Even the backyard, where she often tended to her roses, was still. I climbed the stairs, a knot forming in my stomach. Something wasn't right. At the top, I froze. A muffled sound, hushed voices, came from the bedroom. My bedroom. Every instinct in me screamed to turn around, to leave, but my feet moved on their own. I pushed the door open, and the sight that greeted me will haunt me for the rest of my life. There she was, Elena, lying across our bed, tangled in sheets that still smelled faintly of my cologne. And with her was Victor, her brother-in-law, a man I instantly recognized. His face twisted into a mixture of shock and panic as he scrambled to cover himself. Elena didn't even bother to hide. She sat up slowly, her expression a mixture of irritation and defiance, as though I had interrupted her relaxing afternoon. "You're home early," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Home early?" I repeated, my voice barely audible as the weight of the moment crushed me. Anger boiled in my chest, but I was paralyzed by disbelief. "Lucas, listen," Elena started, but I cut her off with a sharp glare. "Listen to what, Elena?" My voice rose as I took a step into the room. "To excuses? To lies? You're screwing Victor in my bed, and you want me to listen?" Victor, ever the coward, stuttered, "Lucas, shut up," I barked, my tone so sharp that he flinched. "You don't get to speak. You don't get to say anything." Victor scrambled to gather his clothes, mumbling apologies that I didn't hear. My focus was entirely on Elena. The woman I had built my life with. The woman I thought I knew. And she didn't even look ashamed. "What the hell is wrong with you?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Do you have any idea what you've done? What this means?" Elena shrugged, her apathy like a knife twisting in my chest. "I don't know, Lucas. Maybe if you weren't gone all the time, this wouldn't have happened." Her words landed like a physical blow, leaving me stunned. Not an apology. Not even an ounce of remorse. Just cold, calculated deflection. "You're blaming me?" I said, incredulous. "I'm out there busting my ass, serving our country, and you think it's my fault you can't stay loyal for 5 damn minutes?" "Maybe," she shot back, her voice icy. "Maybe I wouldn't have to look elsewhere if you weren't so rigid. So controlling. Did you ever think about that?" Her words stung, but they also lit a fire in me. "Controlling?" I shouted. "You've had everything handed to you on a silver platter, Elena. A home, financial security, everything you ever wanted, and this is how you repay me?" Her face hardened, her usual warmth replaced by something cold and unfamiliar. "Maybe I wanted more than just security, Lucas. Maybe I wanted to feel alive. alive?" I echoed, the word like poison on my tongue. I stared at her, desperately searching for some trace of the woman I thought I knew. But she wasn't there. The Elena I loved was gone, replaced by a stranger in her skin. Victor bolted from the room, his clothes barely clinging to him as he fled. I didn't stop him. My fists clenched at my sides, but I knew better than to lash out. My time in the military had taught me one thing: rage was a tool, and wasting it here would accomplish nothing. Elena stood by the bed, arms crossed, her expression mocking. "Are you done, Lucas? Because I have nothing else to say." "Oh, we're not done," I said, my voice low and sharp. "Not by a long shot." She rolled her eyes, brushing past me. "If you want to talk, we can do it when you've calmed down. Right now, you're just being dramatic." "Dramatic?" I snapped, turning to follow her. "You just destroyed our marriage, and you think I'm being dramatic?" "Destroyed?" She scoffed, walking down the stairs with an air of arrogance. "Don't be so dramatic, Lucas. It's not like I killed someone. People cheat, it happens." Her apathy was suffocating, a stark contrast to the hurricane of emotions swirling inside me. I watched her pour herself a glass of wine in the kitchen, acting as though nothing had happened. As though I didn't exist. That was the moment I realized she wasn't going to stop. Not unless I made her. After she disappeared upstairs, I sat down heavily on the couch, my head spinning. The silence of the house was deafening, broken only by the faint hum of the refrigerator. I couldn't let this go, not without a fight. But I couldn't do this alone. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through the contacts, landing on Max, my oldest friend and former squad mate. Max was the kind of guy who could see through any situation with clarity. He picked up after 2 rings. "Lucas? You okay?" His voice was immediately concerned. "No," I said flatly. "I just walked in on Elena. With Victor." Max let out a low whistle. "Damn, man. Are you serious? Would I joke about this?" I said, my voice breaking slightly. There was silence on the other end, then Max sighed. "What do you need me to do?" I don't know," I admitted. "I need to think, but I can't see straight right now." "Alright, listen," Max said firmly. "First, don't do anything stupid. No fights, no confrontations you'll regret. Second, if you want to fight back, you're going to need leverage. Evidence. Something solid." His words hit like a bolt of clarity. "You're right. I need proof. Something she can't weasel her way out of." "You've got this, man," Max said. "Just remember, don't let her control the narrative. You take charge." The next morning, I woke up with renewed focus. Elena was already up, scrolling through her phone in the kitchen. She barely looked at me as I walked in. "Good morning," she said, her tone dripping with fake civility. I didn't answer. Instead, I grabbed coffee and headed upstairs to my office. There was work to be done. I started with our bank accounts, combing through every transaction from the past year. It didn't take long to find the first red flag, a series of charges to a luxury hotel downtown. The dates matched my most recent deployment. I printed out the statements, tucking them into a folder. My gut told me there was more, and I was right. Jewelry purchases I'd never seen, unexplained withdrawals, and deposits into an account I didn't recognize. The deeper I dug, the angrier I became. This wasn't just a fling, this was premeditated. Deliberate. That evening, while Elena was upstairs taking a shower, I rummaged through the hallway drawers until I found it, a small, motion-activated security camera I'd bought months ago for the front porch but never installed. It was easy to set up, and within minutes, it was positioned perfectly in the bedroom, hidden just enough to avoid detection. It felt dirty, sneaky, but necessary. If Elena thought she could keep walking all over me, she was about to learn just how wrong she was. The next 2 days were a waiting game. I pretended everything was fine, staying out of Elena's way and biding my time. On the third night, I hit pay dirt. I was lying in bed, pretending to be asleep, when I heard her tiptoe out of the room. My heart raced as I waited, giving her time to feel safe. Then I checked the camera feed on my phone. There she was, sneaking Victor into the house like a thief. They were laughing, whispering, completely at ease. My stomach churned as I watched them, but I forced myself to stay calm. This was what I needed, proof. I saved the footage to multiple backups and texted Max. She took the bait, I wrote. His reply was immediate. Good. Time for phase 2. The following morning, I met Max at Murphy's Diner, a rundown but reliable spot on the outskirts of Cedar Falls. It was the kind of place where the waitresses knew everyone by name, and the coffee was always fresh. Max was already there, sitting in a corner booth with a cup of coffee and a plate of eggs. He waved me over. "You look like hell," he said as I slid into the seat across from him. "Feel worse," I muttered, grabbing the coffee he'd ordered for me. "But I've got what we need." I handed him my phone, showing him the camera footage. He watched in silence, his jaw tightening as the video played. "Damn," he said, setting the phone down. "That's cold. But it's a start. If we're going to bring her down, we need more than just this." "I found bank records, unexplained withdrawals, and a hidden account," I said. "Something's off, Max. This isn't just infidelity. It feels bigger." Max leaned back, stroking his chin. "You think she's hiding something else?" "I know she is," I said firmly. "I can feel it." Max nodded. "All right. Then we dig deeper. I've got a guy, Elliot. Private investigator. If anyone can connect the dots, it's him." 2 days later, Max called me. "You're going to want to hear this in person," he said. "Meet me at my place." When I arrived, Elliot was already there, a middle-aged man with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. He handed me a folder, his face grim. "What you're dealing with isn't just an affair. It's a full-blown disaster." I opened the folder, my stomach twisting as I read the contents. Hotel receipts, financial transactions, and, most damning, a connection to a shell company involved in laundering money. Elena wasn't just cheating on me, she was deep in something criminal. "She's been moving money," Elliot said, his tone calm but serious. "Big sums. And it's tied to some dangerous people. Cartels. Arms dealers. The kind of people who don't forgive mistakes." I stared at the documents, my heart pounding. "How long has this been going on?" "At least a year," Elliot said. "She's not just a participant. From what I can tell, she's running one of their pipelines. And she's sloppy." Max spoke up, his voice sharp. "Which means they're watching her. And by extension, you." The weight of his words hit me like a punch to the gut. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was about survival. When I got home that evening, the house felt darker than usual. Elena was in the living room, scrolling through her phone, her face lit by the cold glow of the screen. She barely glanced at me as I walked in. "Where've you been?" she asked, her tone more accusatory than curious. "Out," I replied, brushing past her. She didn't push further, but her eyes followed me up the stairs. Something in her gaze told me she knew more than she was letting on. Later that night, as I was reviewing the documents Elliot had given me, there was a sharp knock at the door. My blood ran cold. I crept to the landing, staying out of sight, as Elena answered the door. "What are you doing here?" she hissed, her voice low but sharp. "I told you, time's up," a deep voice replied. I peered down the stairs and froze. Standing in the doorway was a man in a dark suit, his presence radiating authority and danger. You've got 48 hours to fix this. Or else. Elena stepped back, her usual arrogance replaced by visible fear. I just need more time, she whispered. You've had enough time, the man snapped, shoving a folder into her hands. Deliver, or you'll find out what happens when you cross us. Without another word, he turned and walked away, leaving Elena pale and trembling. She slammed the door shut and leaned against it, clutching the folder like a lifeline. I stepped into the hallway, my voice sharp. Who was that? Elena jumped, spinning around to face me. None of your business, she snapped, her voice unsteady. Like hell it isn't, I said, stepping closer. You're dragging me into your mess whether I like it or not. So start talking. She glared at me, her usual mask of indifference slipping. I said I'll handle it. Wrong answer, I growled. You've been lying to me for years, cheating, and now there's some thug showing up at our house making threats? You'd better start talking, Elena. Now. Her lips pressed into a thin line, and for a moment, I thought she might crack. But then she laughed bitterly. You really think you're some kind of hero, don't you? Always so black and white. The world doesn't work like that, Lucas. What the hell are you talking about? I demanded. You wouldn't understand, she spat. You've never had to survive the way I have. Her words didn't make sense, but they fueled my anger. Survive what? You've had everything handed to you. The house, the life, the security, all of it. And maybe I wanted more, she shot back, her voice venomous. Maybe I was tired of waiting around for you to decide to be a real partner instead of just a soldier. Her words stung, but I refused to let her derail the conversation. This isn't about me, Elena. This is about you and the mess you've dragged us into. And you're going to fix it. She didn't answer. Instead, she stormed upstairs, slamming the bedroom door behind her. I stood in the hallway, the silence pressing in on me as I realized just how deep this nightmare had become. The silence in the house was oppressive, broken only by the occasional creak of the floorboards as I paced the living room. My mind was racing. Who was the man at the door? What was in the folder he had given Elena? I waited until I heard the shower running upstairs. Quietly, I crept to the bedroom and opened the door. The folder was lying on the bed, its contents spilling out slightly. My heart pounded as I picked it up and flipped through the papers. The first thing that caught my eye was a contract, filled with dense legal jargon. The words non-disclosure agreement and penalties for breach jumped off the page. Then there were emails, printouts of conversations between Elena and several unidentified recipients. They used coded language, but one thing was clear, Elena was involved in something big, and it wasn't just cheating. The final page stopped me cold. It was a bank statement from an account I didn't recognize, with deposits totaling hundreds of thousands of dollars. The dates lined up perfectly with her business trips, unexplained withdrawals, and extravagant purchases. This wasn't just infidelity or greed. Elena was working for someone dangerous. I snapped photos of everything with my phone and carefully placed the folder back where I found it. As I left the room, my chest heaved with anger and dread. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about survival, for both of us. The next day, I met Max and Elliot again. We sat in a corner booth at Murphy's Diner, where Elliot spread out everything he'd discovered. She's been laundering money for at least a year, Elliot explained, pointing to a timeline he'd constructed. But these people? They're not your average criminals. They're international players, cartels, arms dealers, the works. Elena is just a cog in a very dangerous machine. And now they're at my doorstep, I said, my voice tight. They're losing patience, Elliot continued. That man who came to your house. He's a fixer. His job is to make sure people like Elena don't screw up. If she doesn't deliver, they'll make an example out of her. And if they think you're involved, you're a target too. Max leaned forward, his face grim. We need to get ahead of this, Lucas. If you don't, they're going to bury you both. My phone buzzed on the table. I glanced at it, my stomach sinking as I read the message. You think you've won? You're next. I showed it to Max and Elliot. Elliot cursed under his breath. They know you're digging. That's their warning. What do I do? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Elliot's expression hardened. You go to the feds. Now. That evening, I sat in the living room, staring at the stack of evidence Elliot had given me. My hands trembled as I flipped through it again. Bank statements. Email chains. Photos. It was enough to bury Elena and the people she worked for, but it also put me in their crosshairs. Elena came down the stairs, her face unreadable. We need to talk, she said. About what? I asked coldly. She hesitated, her confidence wavering. You're digging into things you don't understand, Lucas. You're going to get yourself killed. I stood, glaring at her. The only reason I'm in this mess is because of you. So don't you dare act like you're worried about me now. She crossed her arms, her composure cracking. You don't know what these people are capable of. Then tell me. I snapped. For once in your life, tell me the truth. Her jaw tightened, and for a moment, I thought she might break. But instead, she turned away. I can't, she said quietly. Then we're done, I said, my voice firm. I'm going to the authorities. And if you're smart, you'll cooperate. It's your only way out. Elena froze, her back to me. If you do this, they'll come after you too. They already are, I said, holding up my phone with the threatening message. And I'm not about to sit here and wait for them to pull the trigger. She turned, her face pale. Lucas, please. Don't do this. But I'd made up my mind. This wasn't just about her betrayal anymore. It was about my survival, and my freedom. The next morning, I met with federal agents at a secure location, Elliot's connections paving the way. Agent Taylor, a no-nonsense woman in her 40s, reviewed the evidence I'd brought. This is solid, she said, nodding as she flipped through the files. But you've painted a target on your back, Mr. Reed. These people don't forgive or forget. So what do I do? I asked, the weight of her words settling over me. You cooperate, she said. We'll protect you, but it's going to cost you. New identity. New life. Witness protection. The words felt like a death sentence. Everything I'd built, everything I'd fought for, was about to disappear. But what choice did I have? Later that evening, as I packed a small bag for my relocation, I received a voicemail from Elena. Her voice was venomous, laced with regret and bitterness. I hope you're happy, Lucas, she said. You've destroyed everything. I did what I had to do to survive, but you? You stabbed me in the back. Don't think for a second that you're innocent in all this. I deleted the message without hesitation. Her words didn't matter anymore. She had made her choices, and so had I. 2 weeks later, I stood in the doorway of a small house in a quiet Midwest town, a far cry from Cedar Falls. The government had done its job, scrubbing my identity and setting me up in a place where no one knew my name. As I unpacked the single duffel bag I was allowed to bring, I reflected on everything I'd lost, my home, my marriage, and the life I once thought I'd have. But I'd also gained something, freedom. A chance to rebuild from the ashes. That evening, I sat on the porch, watching the sun set over the horizon. For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of peace. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing: I would never let anyone take control of my life again.